Thanks for having me. I'm sensing a theme to this symposium, machine learning and data being pervasive. So where do we start? Lots to talk about, and I think a lot probably was touched on earlier. So maybe we can add to that conversation. Let's start maybe with the panelists just introducing themselves so we all know who you are.
I'm Sergey from Furtaw and Partners. Okay.
I'm Pablo Zamorano from Heatherwick Studio in London.
Hi, I'm Sergey Pigach from Core Studio.
Hello, this is Onur from New Balance.
Okay, can you talk a little bit about what you're doing with machine learning? And is it maybe more on the research side, or are you able to operationalize it in your firms?
Okay, I'll start. So we're at the moment where we are exploring it. We are lucky to have a small group of people in the studio that can do a bit of research, and we've been engaging with the technology for some time and trying to test it from the design perspective. What is been kind of key for us, it's been trying to kind of implement our key design values and try to find the usefulness of these tools to kind of implement them across the studio and our projects.
Yeah, I guess at Core, we've been playing around with AI for a while now. I mean, Dan remembers, he was there. And I think we're coming to a point where we can actually start to use those tools in production, so to speak, or at least to automate and accelerate certain repetitive tasks that will hopefully make us more efficient. And that's one main focus of research. This is what Core AI is currently focusing on, developing microservices and micro apps for specific engineering tasks that need to be regularly performed. On the other hand, we've been looking into DevOps, the DevOps side of things, kind of the plumbing that goes behind, running more complex AI-enabled projects so that everything is streamlined and we have transparency and we can kind of put together much more complex applications and run them smoothly.
We have been using machine learning in different domains. So we started with surrogate models. So we have a known problem. Can we find the solution faster? We're creating small applications for that can be used directly through the office based on generative data that we create. We have been exploring quite a lot the use of machine learning as a design assist model. Most recently, particularly with diffusion models. We have been doing quite a lot of things in a more office-wide scale. So we have been investigating the use on NLPs for search engines within the office to facilitate transfer of knowledge. We are 1,800 people, so now that becomes even more pertinent. And finally, we have been developing quite a few applications around business insights in terms of what we're doing on a board level and how using a machine learning and statistical methods can help us kind of get some insights of what we can do better, what we should be exploring, etc.
Yeah, for us, hello everyone. Again, sorry I wasn't able to be there, but yeah, great panel. I'm pretty happy to be here. First of all, it's a good question, and I think the application comes with research, and the research has to be there because I think this is a time which is very reminiscent of, let's say, when parametric design tools started picking up and people were trying to kind of like employ that. So at that time I was in architecture in the construction industry. Now I'm working for a footwear company. And again, when you look into such a company, the application area is really broad, maybe too broad, because we have designers. So whatever you can think of about design, make it like pattern recognition, creating inspirational images, which is done by everybody now, or trying to kind of like, let's say, understand the styles that we have been developing in the past, right? So that's the design side. But then We have, data analytics, which goes to the consumer side because, you produce a consumer product and then you get feedback from them. And that feedback goes to, it has so many data points, right? So you have, let's say, the fit, you have the color, you have the likes, you have dislikes, and so on and so forth. So the question is, how can you get this from all around the world and reflect back to the product is another question. The third one is about sports research lab we have at New Balance, through which we collect a lot of data, right? So we create custom solutions for our athletes, but at the same time, we try to kind of create better working products for everyone, because you cannot fully customize everything for everybody, right? So again, there needs to be some sort of automation. There needs to be some way to kind of interpret the huge amount of data. Maybe the fourth one that I can mention is, of course, about manufacturing, right? So because we create consumer goods, we have to deal with materials. We are really conscious about the materials we use, the scrap material we create. We need to be as sustainable as possible, and as efficient as possible. So, it's a long answer, but again, I think it's a pretty exciting time to look into all these problems, apply whatever we can for now, but also look for the opportunities for near future.
And okay, so there's this sort of a cross section, I guess, between research and production. What sort of sources of data are you using, and does your firm have a overall data strategy, and particularly about maybe how it grows and how you govern that?
That's a very interesting question, actually, because we found out we are a 50-year-old company and we have a lot of data, and it's actually very, very hard to use that data as is, because in order to retrieve it, put it in a format that can be readable, tag it, augment it, et cetera, that process alone takes 90% of the time that it takes to create a training system, right? So creating a machine learning model right now to train for anything, for a single surrogate model, is actually very simple. Things are out there, you can just use it, but the data itself, to get it, to gather it within the company is very difficult. And that's why we found that for a lot of things that we're doing, we're actually creating generative data sets that become a much more easier proposition to do things very fast, kind of create a proof of concept and then move on. Having a big strategy around data on an office scale can be quite challenging, particularly when you're a global office like we are, and I guess that this is true for many people in this room. The moment you start discussing data lakes and where the data lies, how you can retrieve it back, some of that data is in cold storage, some of that data is live, it becomes in and of itself a problem, a huge problem. And I feel that unlike other industries, this is where machine learning is held back in our industry, because the data as it stands is not in the right format, and it's so dispersed through different typologies, untagged, random, that makes everything almost an impossibility unless you're kind of really keen.
Yeah, actually, I think that we're pretty much in the same boat, because lucky for us, we're an engineering firm, which means that a lot of the problems that we're trying to solve are very well defined. And for the most part, those problems have right verifiable answers. So instead of trying to, go through the horrors of, scraping Revit files off of our P drive, because again, Thornton Tomasetti has been around for a long time, and we do have a lot of projects, and we do have tons and tons of what one would consider data, which really isn't, because it's really hard to extract this out of the sedimentary layers of projects information that's been accumulating over the years into something usable. So what we've been doing for the most part is we've been writing our own solvers and exporting synthetic data sets, which allows us to have very good coverage. Again, from a structural perspective, most buildings don't vary as much as they could, right? So you would have a lot of data in particular areas of the data set, and then just gaps on the extremes or in some particular regions. And also we can generate as much data as we need. So we found this to be very useful and very helpful.
I mean, so I think we're closer to Martha's case in this case, although we're a much smaller firm. In the way we're doing it at the moment, we're just trying to kind of restart our process of retagging all the information we have. And what has been quite interesting for us, because we work not only, let's say, with information that comes from kind of 3D models or images from projects or renderings, this is quite tied to what happens in kind of the makings of what we do and kind of our physical archive. And as we are trying to digitize that information, now we're trying to use the opportunity to actually merge the information we have as one and trying to kind of retag everything. But it's a process that we're starting from scratch now.
Thanks. Onur, before we go to you, I just want to introduce Brian from Nvidia. Give you a chance to introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. Brian Furtaw from Nvidia, senior data scientist. I actually had a chance to attend this the hackathon for the AECtech group a few years back, and it's great to be back again and be able to participate in this panel today.
Great, welcome. Good to have you. Just to catch you up to speed, the question we were just asking was about data strategy. So Onur, I'll give you a chance to answer, but we were asking if your firms had an overall data strategy and what sort of sources you use.
Yeah, I'd say it's in the making for us, because interestingly, New Balance it's a cultural thing. I would say it's this 8,000 employee company, and the design and like technical stuff is a very, very, very small portion of that. And shoes are very conventional things that to make. If you look at the cutting edge stuff, it's maybe 1 in 10,000. Like 0.01% of what is being done in the industry. So, but as we move forward, I think what's interesting is that again with all this AI and ML stuff has been cooking for a long while. Actually, what is interesting about last 5 years is finally we are kind of like seeing these tools in fruition. They are becoming like mature. So the nice thing is also, I think, like again, because it's fast to make shoes, they change all the time. The data collection methods change all the time. Now we have to adapt, right? So we have to find the right solutions. But the nice thing is, again, maybe I can refer back to Sports Research Lab. We have, we are looking into new ways of collecting data immediately, because there's a new tool that is going to enable us to look into the problem or reshape the problem in a different way and find, again, new or novel solution. And so the short answer is we don't have, at least for design, we have IT, we have consumer insights and so on. So those are like different studies. I cannot talk on their behalf. For design, it's in the making, I would say.
Great. A few of you mentioned that we're essentially building on the shoulders of giants. Machine learning has been around for over 50 years. And I think in more other industries first, but we're seeing a lot of momentum these days. So especially with, it was mentioned before, but the Mid-Journey and DALL-E, and I used to think that machine learning wouldn't get to the creative space. And so now that we sort of see that it has, even in a very maybe premature sense, is this an opportunity or a threat? And what will this do to the future of design?
I think to a degree, any powerful technology is both an opportunity and a threat. And right now, I understand the creative professionals who are unsettled by the fact that, the foundational belief that members of so-called creative class can't be automated out of their jobs is being shaken by things like diffusion models. But in the meantime, I don't think that Midjourney or DALL-E or Stable Diffusion constitute a radical departure from where things have been going for a long time. If you guys remember the original Jurassic Park, there's a scene where they explain that raptors always hunt in pairs, and there's one raptor that stares you in the face and distracts you while the other one attacks from the side. I think for me, like machine learning and the advancements of AI, they're kind of like this raptor that's staring you in the face, and everybody's looking at it because, you know, it's there and it's very loud and obvious, and it produces very spectacular results that are hard to ignore. But the proverbial smart girl who's attacking you from the side is literally everything else that's been happening in the domain of computation and automation for the past, I don't know, 20 years. And if we're asking ourselves the question like, okay, can a designer as a professional be automated out of their job? We have to define what a designer is. And you can ask 10 people what makes a good designer, you'll get 11 answers, but I think the answers could be roughly clustered into two big categories. On the one hand, you have a designer as a problem solver, you know, a person who just finds solutions to well-defined problems. On the other hand, you have a designer as a poet. And I guess the argument for a long time was that we'll never have a technology that can automate the poet. Unfortunately, you don't need the poet to make a competent building. And 99% of buildings that are being built today are competent. They're not outstanding. They stand up. They don't leak. They maybe are even environmentally efficient. And that's good enough for most developers who pay money to build those buildings. Those aren't the buildings that we read about or talk about because we don't find them interesting, but that's most of what's being built. And my projection in the long term is that we'll see kind of this Pareto distribution taking place where the middle evaporates and we no longer have architects designing, let's say, mundane buildings, or the majority of the buildings configurators that can do it 80% as well for 1% of the cost. And the majority of top firms will just work on the 1% of high-end kind of specialty projects, which I know is grim, but you know.
I'm so tired of this question. It's like it's non-mending, like always that question arises, and it's like, my answer is maybe yes, so what, right? When I was in university, like I did most of my classes with a rapidograph, and I've been told computers will never pick up because, you know, doing it by hand is a completely different thing. Now, I don't look that old, but I am. And then I left and, well, know what happened there. After that, I said, I'm going to do computational design, parametric design. And they were telling me, this is nonsense. Nobody's going, like, this is not going to catch up because a true designer is a true designer who sees there and design. And we all know how this ends up kind of wrapping up. And now everything's about machine learning. Oh, we're going to be kind of taken out of the equation. Okay, take me out of the equation. I don't mind, you know, things may go there. It's fine. It's absolutely fine. You know, these things come and other opportunities arise. And I think the problem is that now we're trying to see how we're going to remain in the equation. And unless we decide to see where we're going to be when we're out of the equation, what is the next thing that we're going to be doing? How is this thing going to drive our creativity? New opportunities, new positions. Nowadays, there are positions out there in the industry that never existed, not even 10 years ago. So I think it's just a bit childish to always kind of see these things with fear. It's not about acceptance, it's about vision. And I think we're lacking the vision. We have like tunnel vision in terms of where we think our role is. And our role is ever changing. Creativity is ever changing. If a robot comes and takes my job, fine, I'll sit on a beach and I'll do something else. I find something more creative to do.
And you say that, well, an AI is translating you behind you, you know, doing a speech recognition. I mean, you know, it's just that it's obviously here and it's going to stay, you know, and I don't think there's any point in being scared, you know, by it. I think, I've got an 8-year-old, and she's designing stuff already, and the games that she plays, either it's Roblox or whatever, and AI is here, it's just, or all these kind of diffusion models, are just proving to be very intuitive ways of interacting with a new technology and a new platform. So I'm particularly really excited about what can come out of this, these new kind of platforms, and tools. And I think, in a way, our role, as long as we can, it's to explore them and find new opportunities. I don't think we're either problem solvers, or poets. I think our role is more often than not to actually come with the problems as well that we want to solve, and find the next kind of type of problems is always going to be an open job, and controlling and using these platforms, I think, is just a great way of doing it. I'm quite excited about
just that. Also, that one thing to say is that, like, the machine learning this is the third wave of the machine learning evolution, right? This has been happening, as you said, for 50 years, and every 10, 15 years we get overexcited. Oh, this thing is coming, like robots are going to, and then nothing. And then something changes again, and then nothing. So I will not hold my breath about somebody taking your job. All I'm saying is, like, look to the future.
Okay, I will jump in. Somebody's looking at me, like Pablo just looked at me, so I'm going to jump in here. I think, the machine learning, I'm going to increase your 50 years to 90 years, actually. And then I'm going to give an example, which is, again, reminiscent of the parametric design madness that happened 15 to 20 years ago. Exactly 15 years ago, I was at that, desk kind of like presenting, and Robert Otani was there, and I was presenting 2 buildings that we designed at KPF by using parametric design. The question was, are we going to use parametric design for everything? Are the computer going to generate everything, and then we're going to become creators? We are not designers anymore, and so on and so forth. Okay, and I think there was a lot of leverage. There is still leverage. I never liked it, and I used parametric design to the bone, scripting to the bone, but I was always kind of like kept my distance too, because it was, I think we created a lot of noise too, right? So maybe if I take anything that is designed using parametric design and all the models that has been generated, maybe 1% or 5% is good. It's like art, right? So humans, we just do lots of stuff, only 5% of is good, 95% is noise. So the good thing now happening is, it's happening so fast, I'm so happy, right? So Midjourney, because if text-to-image tools were as slow as parametric design, if they required such high skills, this would take another 10, 15 years to people to get over it. And then, we would be swimming in this, muddy water for a long time. So now, all of us can sit in front of Midjourney, you type sharp, shiny, octane render shoe. We all design amazing shoes, right? So if it is designing. So the beautiful thing is, we are all posting, like buildings, shoes, this and that, cars. I mean, this is just noise, right? So what we need to do, I'm telling this to you now. So earlier we realized this, it's going to get to a better place. And I agree with Marta 100%. So about the question. So I think the last thing that I would like to add is, like, I think it's none. It's not it. I mean, it's just a tool, right? So I don't want to highlight it as a threat or an opportunity. It's just another thing that appears in time, and the human values will remain the same. We will always want to be healthy. We want to make good things. We want to do, and so on and so forth, right? So go back, like, I don't know, 200 years ago, 100 years ago, when people invented like steam-powered engines, and then gas-operated engines, and so it's same thing. Right, horses being replaced, the horse carrier driver being replaced, and so on and so forth. So the first image that I created with Midjourney was AI bandwagon, and I posted it on LinkedIn saying, okay, I created a huge bandwagon so all of us can hop into that, right? So that's like and it was again a replication of the parametric design era. This is nothing to say demean anything about text-to-image stuff. I think it's amazing. I think it's wonderful. I love doing it. I do it every day, right? But the question is, as Marta said, it's like, so what? So some people will answer by creating noise. Some people will look into that so what question, which is the 5%, and will dedicate their time to answer that 5%. So I think interesting thing will emerge from that 5%. So that's my take.
I'll jump in here. So I know the appearance of this, DALL-E 2 and whatnot seems quite shocking, but just like Onur was saying, I've been watching this grow since its introduction for deep learning on GPUs in 2009. So neural graphics has been around for quite a while, and this is just not so new, but it is evolving very quickly. But you do have to work with it. It is an art form. So, just like in programming, junk in equals junk out. You have to start working with these tools and learn how to use them. And a lot of the tools like DALL-E from OpenAI, now allow you to work with interactive labs. But the first time you use it, you're not going to get what you want. It is, basically, language phrases that are very descriptive of the scene that you want to generate and in the style that you want to generate it, but it definitely has a syntax. And as far as artist input, you may not be aware, but there's a lot of what they call one-shot or zero-shot learners that will take your artwork as input, your 2D sketches, and use them as additional inputs into these neural graphics primitives, and then use that input or your personal style to flavor the outputs to be more in your own art form, artworks, I should say. So this is going to be a burgeoning field, and there's going to be a lot of green grass for folks that are sitting in seminars like this one today. So I would suggest let's all go out and start using the technology and see how it helps our everyday job. It's by no means going to be able to replace people. It's just going to be an assistant.
I think we're running out of time, so I want one more question. It seems that, and many of you sort of touched on this, but machine learning isn't something that's scary. It's not something that's super revolutionary even. And in many ways, we're a lot like machine learning algorithms. We view the world, we interpret what we see, and we build on that data. So my question is, will technology just accentuate our own abilities and weaknesses, or can we use this technology to create better versions of ourselves?
It's funny that you say we are like machine learning algorithms, where actually they were built to be like us. So I think that in and of itself should answer your question, right? These are relationships that kind of are bidirectional. As with everything in this life, you can use technology for good purposes and you can use it for bad purposes. So it can make you better or it can make you horrible. And that's true for everything. So I think if we're now talking about machine learning because it's the flavor of the day and everybody is excited and amazed by it. But if you think that same question kind of is true for every single technology in our industry and any other industry. So at the end of the day, it's up to us to use it for good rather than for bad. And I'm sure, like, given human nature, most of us will use it for bad, but that's okay. That's what human nature does, and that's who we are. And
yeah, I want to echo that. I don't know whether we'll be able to use AI to make things better or worse. One thing I can guarantee that we will push this technology to its breaking point, just because as a species, we have a pretty abysmal track record in terms of exercising any sort of restraint when it comes to a powerful technology that falls into our hands. But I think generally, technology tends to take on a life of its own, and it's kind of futile to try to stand in the way of the steaming locomotive that is a technological process. Doesn't generally work out well. And you know, they tried burning factories back in the Industrial Revolution that didn't get them very far. So the technology will evolve, and it's not a question of whether or not we will be like, we don't decide how we're going to use this technology. The technology will kind of just evolve on its own, and we'll be forced to figure out how to live with it and how to work with it and what we can use it for. But yeah, it's gonna get weird.
Well, maybe just to pivot with one more question would be, there's a trend in other industries that have been maybe a bit more mature with machine learning over the past decade towards responsible and ethical AI. So what does that mean for architecture? And if machine learning is just a tool, then who is going to make the decisions, and how do we push as an industry towards responsible use of AI?
Well, I think it all depends on what you use it for, you know, because as you know, in the design industry, we love being biased, right? So having or trying to explore a language, you know, used to be a big thing, right? So you can get more bias than that. You're writing yourself your own kind of alphabet, you know, to design. So if you're using these new tools to do the same, then you really want them to be quite biased. And when we're training our own data sets, we're doing the exact same thing, right? So I think it's more about how you control them. And, you know, there's always an ethical question, you know, when you design something, because you're not designing it for yourself, but for someone else, you know, and I think that's not going to change, you know, much from how it is right now. You know, these kind of new tools may give us more power, or maybe more kind of speed in the terms of how we get to the final result, maybe, or they may just give us more kind of options to get more and more and more options, you know, in how you get to the final kind of place, you know. But I don't think necessarily they will kind of derive much in terms of, you know, how you engage with kind of ethical design, let's say, you know, across the way.
But it's interesting that you use the word control, and actually with a lot of this bias is embedded bias, a bias that you have no control over. And that is something that you can do a lot of ethical kind of questioning of what's happening, but it's going to still be there. And the test that they've done with the judiciary here in the US is a very telling story, and we don't have time for me to tell you that, but go ahead and search it. Basically, the bias was against Black male men, right? So, and it was embedded, and they didn't realize it. So control is an interesting, but potentially a little fraught word in this context, in my humble opinion.
May I jump in for a second? Just 2 minutes. I want to combine your last two questions, and because I want to give something really optimistic too. I used to be very pessimistic about parametric design, which is proven in my view, right? But for AI, what is interesting is I think your last question is all that question will be answered whether the big brother, you know, controls the system or the, you know, the larger population controls the system. I think that that's going to be the, you know, the answer will be revealed that way. It can go anyway, you know, one of these two ways. But what is interesting about your previous question is that, and why I'm optimistic is this. So we always, you know, from the initiation of the Turing machine, you know, we try to build human consciousness or human intelligence using machines. And then, you know, in the last 10, 20 years, we always talk about, okay, automation, machines being intelligent, solving problems, and machine learning giving you the amazing answer for optimization and so on and so forth. So we all as designers use that. And then Midjourney came and they exploded Discord in like 1 month. 1 million people started using it. Last time I checked, it was 3 million people. Now it's like tens of millions of people are using it. So it turns out the real use or the spreaded use of, you know, this technology has become by nature, this is a point in time in humanity's, you know, like our lifespan, where everybody is using text to, you know, image prompts and making images. It's an interesting result to me because humans, at the end, in my mind, people picked ambiguity over precision, right? So like, of course, the algorithm is trying to create more precise images, you know, like replicate photographic images and so on and so forth. But the artwork, the images you create, embeds a lot of ambiguity in it, and we are using semantics, the words, we don't even understand each other, right? So like every word means two different things, and the sentences mean 5 different things, and so on and so forth. So that's a big potential in my mind, right? So just people visually being engaged with this and visual ambiguity being so powerful and being explored is very interesting. I wouldn't expect, for instance, such a tool to pick up, like this much and, go over the discussions of precision, efficiency, and so on and so forth. So that's interesting for me.
All right. Well, I think with that, we're out of time. Thank you so much for joining us today and giving your insights. I really enjoyed the conversation, and hopefully you did as well.
Thank you, Dan.